Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast, brought to you by the 2017 URM Summit, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to spend 4 days with the next generation of audio professionals and special guests, including Andrew Wade, Kane Churko, Billy Decker, Fluff, Brian Hood, and many more. The inspiration, ideas, and friendship you'll get here are the things that you'll look back on as inflection points in your life. Learn more at urmsummit.com. The URM podcast is also brought to you by Heirloom Microphones. Heirloom microphones are high-end condenser microphones with something that has never been seen in the microphone industry, a triangular membrane. With our patented membranes and our tailored phase linear electronics, your recording and live experience will never be the same. Heirloom, our microphones will help you discover clarity. Go to ehrlund.se for more info. And now your host, EYAL Levy.
Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast. I am EYAL Levy, and with me is Jaime Gomez Arellano, who you really should know a lot about because he's just a killer producer. And what I like about his sound is that he's doing his own thing. He really gets much more organic sounding, real sounds that sound like real people playing. And his productions are still modern, but they definitely sound like real people. And I know that a lot of people have critiques about modern production not sounding like real people playing. He's worked with phenomenal bands such as Ghost, Cathedral, Sunn O, Electric, Wizard, Teresa, Plan B. He's also a drummer. And this is an interesting one to me personally. He's from Cali, Colombia, but lives in England. And so I want to know how that happened.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me in your show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
It was... I was listening to a lot of British music when I was a kid. Like, I kind of grew up listening to a combination of Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, all this British stuff, as well as some of the British metal stuff. Like, I really liked Carcass, and I really liked Paradise Lost. I really liked Bolt Thrower, you name it, a lot of these bands. So when I finished school, my parents said, "Oh, well, you should go to America to learn English." And I said, "Well, I'd rather go to England," because I was more interested in Europe than the US, to be honest with you. And I just ended up convincing my parents to send me to London to do a year of English. And in that time, I found about SAE to do a degree in sound engineering, and then I kind of stayed here, and that's kind of how I ended up here. Really, it was just like a romance with European music, I suppose.
It's interesting. Most of the time, people from South America go to the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, that's right.
My mom's from Mexico. She went to the U.S. It's just not that common for people from there to end up in Europe. It does happen. So I thought it was cool that you mentioned that you used to listen to Paradise Lost because, I mean, you just did the record that came out, last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, last week, yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit about that, because Paradise Lost is one of those bands that, when I was 13, they were already around for a while. And they've just been around forever. You've always heard about them. I think that in the States, they're not as well known, but I know that they're a lot more well known over in Europe. And I've always thought of them as like British Death Doom. I don't know if that's an appropriate title or not for what they sound like, but tell us a little bit about the new album. What were your goals with it? Well,
I don't know if you're aware that I did the previous one as well, the previous record. But with the new one, I mean, they've kind of gone full circle as a band. They started as you said, as a kind of gothic doom kind of band, and then they evolved really far to a point where they were sounding like Depeche Mode, like in the late 90s. And then they just kind of gradually, like, you know, coming back into the roots. And the previous album, The Plague Within, had some elements of the kind of more melodic Paradise Lost from the mid-90s, late 90s, with a tinge.
So that's what I remember.
Yeah, with a tinge, kind of, but going back to the heavy stuff. And then when Greg sent me the demos for the new album, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is just like, it's a Doom record, 100%. So, you know, I just kind of like with every album I do, you know, I think a lot of metal producers, they kind of have their kind of method of doing things, and they just always kind of go for a lot of the same stuff. But every record I make, like I have a clean slate, and I just kind of have a picture in my head of what I think it's going to sound like. And with this album, I just wanted it to be...
Do you ever get there?
Well, no one ever does, right? You know, like
yeah.
You get close enough, I guess, and but you know, like I think all of us, like producers and engineers, we're all a bit OCD, and we're never 100% happy. You know, we can always be like 99% happy, but there's always, you know, that little thing when you're listening back and you're like, oh, I wish I changed like 0.5 dB on that little bit. And it's always
I think that, have you ever met people who are sometimes musicians or engineers who are really, really happy with how they sound? Normally they suck, and normally they don't get any better. All the best guys I know continually think that they continually hate themselves. They always think that they could get way better. They're always studying. Mm-hmm. Like an example I like to give is that I remember Jeff Loomis telling me that he took guitar lessons a couple years ago or something. I think he told, or 3 years ago.
Wow.
I was having a conversation with him, and I didn't ask him if he was taking lessons. He just mentioned it relevant to the conversation that he was studying that with his guitar teacher, something we were talking about. And it was like, wow, if this guy, who is one of the very best guitar players in the world in the genre, still thinks he needs to get better and will still take lessons, what is everybody else's excuse for not? For thinking great?
That's right. You know, like I'm always studying, and I'm always talking to other producers who are friends of mine and discussing techniques and trying out new equipment, and like with Russ Russell and Andy Sneap, like occasionally we chat about stuff, and Tom
both great dudes.
Yeah, Tom Dalgetty as well, who's doing really well. He's a great producer. And we sit down and we talk gear, and I'm always learning. Always, I'm always trying new things, trying new microphones, new software, new drums, new guitars, new amps, new techniques, and always trying to learn. And I always have this mentality that I want to make the next record better than the last one, even if the band is really different. Always want to do it better. And the way to do that is just to keep going.
So on the topic of always learning and always trying to get better, I'm wondering, were you recording when you lived in Colombia, or did you start doing that once you got to England? And if you were recording in Colombia, how did you go about learning there?
Yes, I started in Colombia. I think the first recording I did, I was about 13 or 14 years old. And I had like a band with a couple of my best mates at the time, who are still my best mates these days, actually. And we just had this kind of band for fun. And my mom is a singer. She's released like 30 albums or something like that. She's very, very talented musician in Colombia, like South American folk kind of music. So because of that, we had a bit of like basic kind of equipment at home. We had a mixing desk, and then I just kind of, okay, so how can I connect this? How can I record onto stuff? So I found a way of connecting it to a cassette deck, which, at the time was really exciting, but, it's just an RCA connection at the back of the desk into the input of the deck. So it wasn't hard, but I was discovering, I was discovering all this by myself, and like playing with EQs and stuff.
It's hard when no one teaches it to you when you're just a kid. I mean, I remember before I knew anything, I'm talking when I was 15 or something, and I figured out how to record onto a cassette deck with an RCA. I was like, wow,
yeah,
I know how to connect something.
Yeah, you feel pretty special, and it is quite special. Like I don't know how old you are, but I'm 35, and back then in Colombia we had no internet, we had no. There was no one teaching that kind of stuff around. There will be like some of the guys doing live sound, and that was it, really.
Well, I'm 38, so similar age.
Yeah.
But, I mean, dude, I didn't grow up in Colombia. I grew up in Atlanta.
Right.
And still, there was, like, nowhere to really learn this kind of stuff. It just didn't exist back then. You had to, I feel like either you had to grow up like you did into a family that does it, or somehow you needed to make friends with the local studio guy. That's what I did when I was a teenager. My band went to record at a studio when I was like 14 or 15, and I just made friends with the engineer who owned it. And little by little, I would just go there more and more, and he would teach me a few things. And that's kind of how it started. But there's no internet or anything, no way to really really learn this stuff otherwise.
Yeah, I think these days it's really easy. Like you just go on YouTube and there's a lot of information there and forums and stuff. So I kind of got better at recording, and then I started recording some like friends' bands in my mom's house. And then I started getting really pally with a friend of mine that was doing live sound. So he'll take me to shows when, from the beginning, when there would, he was working for like a PA hire company. So he'll show me how to wire everything and how to use stuff and how to kind of use compressors and EQs and kind of mic placement. And I learned a lot from him. He's doing really well these days. He's a live sound engineer, and he's doing great in Latin America. Like, he's traveling all over the world with like really big Latin American artists that I do not know, but I know he's doing great. So I learned a lot from him, and then I just I always really liked it, because I always been kind of quite nerdy, and I like electronics and stuff. So I just kind of kept going, and then when I found out about the degree in SAE London, then I just went, actually, wow, this is what I want to do. So I did that.
So I think that a lot of people wonder whether or not they should get a degree in recording. And I don't know, what year did you go to SAE?
I started in 2000.
Okay, so what they would have been teaching then is vastly different than what they would teach now, I would think.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like you going there was very worth it. Do you think for someone nowadays who wants to get good at this stuff that they should go to school, or do you think it's easier without school these days? Or do you have no opinion?
No, I think, like I do some guest lectures in SAE sometimes, and I haven't done one in a while, and I think it depends on how you take it. For me, it was a good experience because I learned a lot of the basics that I wouldn't have really just sat there myself, like learning about electronics and how EQs actually work and compressors, how they actually work and what they actually do. So I think the theory was pretty good. It was good to learn about acoustics as well, about how to use tape machines, which I think they don't do anymore. So some of the basic knowledge was great. Then there were these modules on like music industry and like these assignments where you just kind of have to write really long essays, and I didn't like that. But I had access to recording studios 24 hours a day. So I just rinsed the hell out of it, and I was just there every night recording stuff. And then I'll sleep a couple of hours in the couch, and then I'll go to my lecture. Then I'll go home, sleep a couple of hours, and then come back at night and do it all over again. So I got a lot of experience from that.
And, I've always told people, if you're going to go to school, most people who go to school are going to fail because they don't take advantage of what they have there. If you actually go to school and you devote yourself to getting every single ounce of value you can out of it, like every single last bit, and you use as much of that free studio time as you can, and you get as much as you can individually from all the teachers, and you really, really do it, then I don't see how it can be a bad thing to go.
I think it's, I mean, unless you, and it's funny, man, like the two other guys from my class that were there all the time, they're both doing pretty well too. You know, like one of them became like he works in broadcasting, and he's got like a really, really good job. The other guy he published a book on mixing. He's more of an academic kind of guy, but he did well, and you know, and those guys were there all the time. But the other guys that were there just for the lectures and for a couple of hours of studio time, just so they could pass their practical assignments, I'm pretty sure none of them work in the music industry.
Of course not. I mean, you have to be obsessed with this stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have to be obsessed your whole life, but I do believe that there's a certain amount of time, like 5 or 10 years for most people. You know, sometimes you get a genius where it only takes 3 or something, but you know, you need a good 5 or 10 years where you're just obsessed and you're in there all the time, whether you're in school or learning on your own or an intern somewhere or whatever. You just need to put in that kind of time and really not do anything else.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's a lot easier when you're young.
Yeah, and you know, and it's such a fascinating subject that covers so many other things. Like, so why wouldn't you? You know, like that's another thing I love about my job. You know, I'm a businessman, I'm a psychologist, I'm an electrician, I'm a cleaner, I'm the coffee boy. You know, like there's so many jobs involved into what, you know, like record production involves, you know, and it just never ends. So I think it's such a fascinating subject, like overall, like a thing to do. But I think you really have to love it, and you really have to want it, because it's very competitive, it's very cliquey, it's hard to make a name for yourself. So you just, I think if you really want to succeed in this kind of stuff, you either get really, really lucky, or you're just going to have to work really, really hard.
Or both.
Yeah.
Work really, really hard. Work really, really hard, and then get lucky, and then work even harder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't know a single person who has a real career who doesn't work their asses off. Even the dudes who get lucky still work their asses off, I think. Out of all those different jobs you listed, are there any that you prefer over the others?
No, I really like all of it. I think the one thing.
So you're just in love with the whole thing?
I just love everything. I mean, the bits I kind of don't like. It's the really boring stuff. Like, you know, when I have to deal with my accountant, or when I have to deal with the lawyer, or you know, stuff. Stuff like that. Just I don't like that, obviously. But who does?
I don't think anybody.
Yeah. And the other thing that's, you know, over the years now is getting a little bit tedious is tracking. I love, you know, I'll be the guy that's gonna spend 3 days getting a drum sound, because I don't like using drum samples, because I like to create something kind of different every time and unique. I love doing that, but the whole process of just sitting there and record and okay, stop, do it again and do it again, you know, like especially guitars, you know, like you have to, if I'm recording guitars and I have the guitarist in the control room, so I have to monitor fairly loud so they can hear themselves.
Yes.
Like I do find that's the only thing that I find quite tiring, but luckily at the moment I have a really good assistant that I really trust. I mean, I obviously listen back to all the takes. I got this guy that's really good at the moment, who's really good with guitar stuff in particular. So I can just fully trust him on stuff, and then I just listen back when they tracked a song, and I just go like, oh, maybe this bit could be better, maybe this is a bit sloppy, or maybe the tuning's a bit weird here, and then we rectify those bits, and that's cool. But yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of help, especially after. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, so it's nice to have that.
Most guys end up getting tracking engineers or some sort of assistant to do the stuff they don't want to do anymore. And I think that it's perfectly natural. And I mean, I feel that way about editing. I mean, I know some guys who love doing it. I wouldn't say that I love doing that sort of stuff, but I did it enough to where once I finally found someone that I trusted to do it for me, I was perfectly happy to let that go, make a little less money, and just make sure that someone who actually cared. Like, see, here's the thing: if you're not really into something, to where like it doesn't excite you, like it's better to let someone else do it who does really love it, because the amount of attention you need to put into it to get it, perfect or like up to standard. Obviously nothing's ever perfect, but I mean, up to standard, you need to really, really be obsessed with it to be good and to get it good enough. And so the guy who ended up editing for me was a dude named John Douglas, who really enjoys doing that stuff. So of course he's going to do a way better job than I ever could, because he's into it. He's like Zen with it.
All right.
So I kind of, I was never Zen with it, and I feel like some guys are that way with tracking too. Like they're better for giving the big picture. And you save your ears too, right?
Yeah.
If you don't track all the guitars, you save your ears so that you can make better decisions later.
Yeah, I agree. I also have the same thing with editing. It's one of those things where I feel like I've done it to death. So I got Chris at the studio doing it for me, and he's really good, and he likes doing it. So, and he does it well. And if he doesn't, I have this joke with him all the time that I tell him he's fired, but he gets fired like 5 times a day as a joke.
One time it might be real. Does he get scared every time?
No, he knows he's a joke. He's a great guy. We have a really good time at work every day. So
how did you go about getting your studio started? I can imagine that it wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't, especially in this country, I mean, this is probably like one of the, the home of, like the birthplace of the best studios and probably the best producers, and
some of the best musicians too.
Yeah, exactly. So it was very tough. I mean, I finished uni in 2003, and that was a long time ago now. So it's been a very slow process where I got a couple of jobs from university when I was in university, because I was doing so well. They actually put me forward for a couple of jobs. One was in a small recording studio that used to record like lots of demos for bands, like at the weekends, and just kind of like a demo kind of studio. But it was pretty good, and I learned a lot there. And then
did they normally give people? Did they normally help students get jobs, or was it just because you were the student that was always there and doing the best, or one of the best students?
Well, I was, but also like back then, I think SAE was a lot smaller, and well, I'm sure actually I've been to the new premises and it's just insanely big now. But I think there was. They do get emails saying, "Oh, we need someone to help out." They do get emails here in the UK, in London, like it's a big city, and they get, "Oh, we need someone to do some editing, or we need someone to do some running, or do some." You get all sorts of stuff. So they put me forward for a couple of jobs, and I got both jobs. So my last year at uni was pretty hard because I was doing my dissertation and stuff, but I was also working. But I was very young, so I had all the energy, so I just did it, and I managed to keep those jobs. And the post-production job was good, because it paid well, although I didn't like it that much. But my bosses were amazing. They were really, really nice, and I really like working for them. And we're still friends, and we keep in touch. So that helped me fund my equipment really slowly. And then in the music studio, in the recording studio, that was a good way to meet bands, and because they had rehearsal studios too. So I met a band there that I really liked, and then we recorded an album that I did for free, and like recorded it there in like downtime, and I mixed it at home in a Power Mac that I had with a pair of Yamaha multimedia speakers. And that's all I had. My Pro Tools 002, my DigiDesign 002 interface, and that's all I had.
I mean, and you did it for free. I think it's great to point out that even after all the studying you did and the fact that you were already getting paid at the Post House, you were still willing to do a record for free just to be able to start doing records. I think most people should do that.
Well, it was a way for it was a bit of an into what I wanted to do. So there was this guy who used to work in the studio, whose name is Daniel O'Sullivan. He's a very, very talented musician. He still plays in the Norwegian band called Olva. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yes, definitely.
So he plays with them now, and we had a band together as well called Mothlight. But way before that, we just met there in the studio. He was just taking care of the rehearsal bands. I was doing freelancing in the recording studio, recording bands, and then he played me some of his old band called My Ass Man, the Carousel of Headless Horses. And I just absolutely loved it. It was like, it sounded...
Wait. What's that name again?
It's pretty...
that name's crazy.
Yeah, it's Miasma and the Carousel of Headless Horses.
Okay.
Yeah, and that actually got released on Rise Above Records, which is Lee Dorian's record label here. So that was kind of like my first proper release. And we spent months working on it on and off because it was a really ambitious project for all of us. I had lots of keyboards and lots of guitars, like this experimental kind of King Crimson-y kind of vibe, like very proggy, very psychedelic, but very musical with like lots of kind of classical music influences and like gypsy music influences, and it's a great record actually. I still love it. But that was a really good way for me to like, okay, like the record's out and people like it, and and then like that kind of scene, you start getting more people like, hey, can you master my album, or can you mix my album, or can you record my album, all this kind of stuff. And then kind of went from there really.
And just give us an idea of what year we're talking about that this was released.
I think it came out a bit late, but I think it came out maybe around 2005, 6.
Okay, so you got out of school in 2003.
Yeah.
And then it still took another 2 or 3 years until you nailed a release.
Yeah.
That came out. Okay. I just wanted people to get some sense that it's not like you got out of school and then within 3 or 4 months you were doing label releases of bands you like. It took 3 years after all the work you did in school. I'm just saying that for people who are listening, who I know a lot of our listeners sometimes move to LA looking for internships and get discouraged when after 6 months they're not making that much money, or after a year of doing lower level stuff, sometimes people get discouraged, things like that. And you just got to understand that everything good takes time, and building a recording career is something that even after some stuff and you're not a total novice, it still takes years until you get an opportunity, and just then people start to know who you are little by little, and you just have to keep on working and working.
Yeah, and get better and better. And I did a lot of stuff really cheap when I was starting out. Like I tell, that record was for free. I'm sure I did some other jobs for free that I can't remember. And a lot of the stuff, if I was really keen on the band, if that was something that I feel, okay, I'm into this and I think I can make it sound good, and I'm really gonna be into it when I'm doing it. So I'm gonna do my best. So I'll do it cheaper because I just want to do it and I just want to get my name out. And you know, but in the same way, like I kept my post-production job because that was paying the bills. So I was literally working 7 days a week from 8:30 in the morning till 6:30 Monday to Friday in the post-production studio. And then I'll go home and work on my own projects until about midnight and then go to bed. And then on the weekend, I'll go to the recording studio, the music studio, and record bands there. Like I did so many, I still do so many 7-day weeks. You know, it's just, you just have to work hard, really.
I don't know a single person who works hard and does well at this who doesn't do 7-day weeks. But do you ever insist on having any time off, or you're totally fine to do no days off if you don't need to?
Not anymore. No, I like having. I tell bands, ideally weekends off. If not possible, then Sunday off, or Saturday. I prefer Sunday off. I don't know why, but you know, sometimes it's not possible. Like I went to Iceland last year to record the band called Solstafir in Sundlagen Studios, which is the Sigur Rós studio, which is an amazing studio. It's a beautiful place and an amazing equipment. And the guy who runs it, Biggie, he's really, really nice to work with. But the deal with that album was that they just didn't have time to stop. So we just worked 28 days straight, every day. And I haven't done that in a while, to be honest. You know, sometimes I just take like, you know, I have like 2 or 3 days off in the month or something, but I haven't done like a whole month, like on all the time. And that was really hard. I think it's not very good for your
mental health.
Like, you know, I was gonna say quality of work, but the quality of work was there because when I was at this, I mean, I had a couple of days where I just, you know, I was just falling asleep all the time. A couple of days just out of tiredness. No one in Solstafir drinks, so I wasn't even drinking either myself. There were no like, you know, like let's go to the bar after the student. There was none of that. But there were a couple of days in the last kind of 2 weeks that I was just falling asleep all the time because I was just so tired. I think it's good to have breaks. I think it's good to have days off. And most importantly these days, like in the last few years, actually, I keep my sessions really short. I don't do
How short?
I work from 11 till 7.
You know, when I worked with Colin Richardson, when he mixed my band's record in like 2006, he only worked from 10 till 6. He, you know, at 6 o'clock we were done. That was it. It was not going later. He did a phenomenal job. So I think that also one of my business partners, Joel Wanasek, he also works specific hours from like 9 till 3 or something in the studio.
Right.
And he doesn't deviate, and he gets more work done than most people I know put together.
Exactly, and that's what works for me as well in my bands. You know, I find that we, if we're, you know, the 12, 15-hour days, they become 12, 15-hour days because the next day you have to re-record all the last stuff you did in the last 3, 4 hours or 5 hours.
Yes.
So, and then everyone gets more pressure. You know, like attention spans drop. People get tired. People get moody. You know, I swear to God, like especially since I moved to the countryside a year and a half ago, I'm not super strict that it's 11 till 7. You know, if like, say if there's a night, everyone's having a drink, we start at 12. And then we work until 8 or even 9 if we're on a roll. You know, it's fine. I'm cool with that. Only if I feel like everyone's on in a good space and performing well and stuff, because I'm not a Pro Tools chop it all up and make it perfect guy. I like recording performances. So I need my bands to be happy and feeling well, and and just being inspired. And if you work someone for 15 hours a day, they're not going to be inspired. I mean, like, when's the last time you played your instrument 15 hours a day? Never. Maybe on their last recording session at one point, but musicians don't play 15 hours a day. No one does. Oh, well, maybe very few of them do, but...
Maybe Steve Vai when he was 17.
Exactly, yeah, something like that. So I think when you're trying to get, you know, like, say, like a heavy-hitting rock drummer or a metal drummer, and you're trying to get 8-9 hours out of it, it's lunacy. You just hear it in the performance. I'm not going to go and sound replace all the drums because I don't like that.
Yeah.
And I just hear it immediately. It's like, dude, like you're sounding a bit more sloppy. You just don't hear the energy on the, like, it feels a bit lifeless. So let's stop. Oh no, I'm really worried about time and blah blah. Trust me, let's go home, have a good night's sleep. Let's wake up tomorrow. I promise you'll be fine. And it's always worked. It's always worked. Doing the short days really works for me and for the last projects I've been doing, like for the last 3 years.
You know, it's I've also started doing over the years shorter and shorter sessions for those reasons as well. And I also encountered that situation with drummers where you start to notice that they're tired. You can hear it. And you say we should stop, and they just want to keep going because they feel guilty, and they don't want to slow the record down. But seriously, without fail, we always end up redoing the stuff from when the dude was tired, and usually something that would take 3 hours tired, usually we get done in like 20 minutes when they're feeling great.
Exactly that. That's exactly my point.
And it's better too.
Yeah, like you've got the energy. Yeah,
the energy is everything. And I think that a lot of beginning producers don't take into account how much the vibe of the people hanging out makes a difference in how the record will actually sound, and how keeping the musicians feeling good and healthy and happy is a big part of it. Because
I agree.
Have you ever seen the documentary about Mike Tyson, the boxer, called Tyson?
No.
Well, it's pretty phenomenal. It's like an autobiography, but he was talking about when he was like #1 in the world and just beating the shit out of everybody and always winning, that it was all just a labor of love, and he was loving every moment of it and was just so happy while he was doing it. And it was kind of that love and joy for it, which allowed him to be that incredible of a fighter, which is crazy to say because he's feeling that way about because he's pummeling people. But it's a similar sort of thing, that if people are feeling really good and they're full of energy and they're not tired and, you know, they're on a good roll, you're just going to get better performances, better vibe, better everything.
Yep. That's definitely the way I roll these days. It just, I don't know. I remember, you know, sessions that I used to do where we would be in the studio, like, literally till like 4 or 5 in the morning, and then go set again at 10, you know, and stuff like that. Yeah, and it's just
fuck that.
I just couldn't do it anymore, to be honest. I mean, it's not like because I want to go home and have a normal life, because if you're doing this kind of job, you can't have a normal life, I find. It's because I have to come home and do a lot of other work.
You know, I was thinking about the not having a normal life thing, and I think that that's very, very true. And lots of times when I've made sessions shorter, I've had to like get people to understand that it has nothing to do with wanting to go out or like not working or anything like that. It has more to do with my ears.
Yeah, of course.
Their ears and ability, because there comes a point after X amount of hours where you just don't hear very well anymore. And if you keep pushing it, then the next day you're going to start from a worse position with your ears, and you're going to last even less time. And if you push that, then, you know, within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, sometimes your hearing is not as good as it was at the beginning of the project. Your ears are worn down, and that makes it harder to pay attention and harder to, be in a good mood. And it adds a lot of stress to the situation, in my opinion. So I think that that's another reason to work less hours, is to keep your ears feeling good.
Yeah, and also I think everyone knows that. Okay, we're working 7-8 hours with a lunch break in the middle. So in those 7-8 hours, everyone's just gonna put all their energy into those hours, instead of like, oh my God, we're gonna be in the studio again 15 hours. And it's like, and people, it's just, I don't know. It's been working out really well for me to do that, actually.
So I want to switch topics and talk about your studio some. It's called Oregon Studios, and I was watching some videos about it, and man, your place is really beautiful. I love the brick. I love the hard surfaces that you've got there, and you've got a ton of guitar amps. And I watched an interview of yours with Russ Russell, who has been on the podcast.
Oh, cool.
He also talked about, he's a great dude. You talked about having around 100 guitar pedals. So are you one of those guitar amp pedal dudes that just likes to collect a bunch of guitar gear?
I like to collect a lot of gear in general, actually. I have a thing for guitar amps. I don't know why, because I can't play guitar, but I think I'm a frustrated guitarist. And
you're a drummer, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And actually, like in the last couple of years, I decided, actually, I need to buy more drums, because like I got way more guitar stuff than drum stuff. So now I have 5 drum kits and 13 snare drums, which is pretty cool, and a lot of cymbals.
That's a pretty good selection right there.
Yeah, I got, vintage stuff, I got modern stuff, maple stuff, birch stuff, all the classic stuff, It's nice to, because I'm really, I've been spending kind of less money on recording equipment and more money on musical instruments, because I just like kind of...
That's so smart, actually.
I think it makes sense, like, because I'm not really like, one of these kind of like plug-in and samples kind of, like guitar emulators and drum samples kind of guy. And, and I don't only work with metal. I work with lots of different stuff. So, I get a band that wants to sound like a retro rock band, and it's like, well, okay, I've got a Marshall Plexi, I got a vintage Marshall cab, I've got a late 60s drum kit that sounds beautiful. I got vintage Silgens, and I got a bunch of vintage mics and stuff. So that's how you get the sound. So obviously it depends on the songs as well, but.
Well, I find, and I've done shootouts with this dude Matt Brown, who is an incredible drum tech engineer. We have a drum course coming out, a production course, and
cool.
We would do these shootouts where we try to see how much of the sound is, how much of the recording chain contributes what to the sound. And man, when you really break it down, the single most important thing besides the player, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah, of course.
Is their instrument.
Yeah, that's it.
And the player and the instrument matter a hell of a lot more than which preamp you're using.
Yeah, 100%.
Microphone also matters a lot.
Yeah.
But if you had to choose, if you had to say, I'm going to invest my money in things that are going to make an immediate difference in the sounds I'm getting, and you already have decent preamps, meaning not total shit.
Yeah.
If you had to choose between getting a bunch of the highest end preamps possible or a bunch of really, really great instruments, I'd go with a lot of really great instruments.
Me too. Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, to be honest with you, like, I don't care what people say. I've got 1073s, NIF 1073s. I've got APIs, 512Cs, and I got the preamps from my SSL, which are great. But it's not like a difference. Like you go, wow, my God, this sounds completely different to the other. I mean, like you hear more of a difference, say, like between the SSL pre's and the APIs and the Neves. Then there is something there for sure. But I think,
it's not the same as a Strat versus a Les Paul, though.
No, I don't think it's that far. I don't think it's even that far. I think
no.
I don't know. Like people can think whatever they want to think about me, but I think a lot of it is just. I mean, they do. I have tracked in like vintage Neves, the classic, the Dave Grohl Neve. One of those I've recorded on. I've recorded on MCIs, on Neve VRs, and APIs, Amex. Like when I think when you're at that level, they do like those pre's sound really good, and I don't think you need to like go crazy like buying like some of these super boutique $2,000 preamps because I don't know, like I just don't hear. I think once they hit a level. Once you hit a level with preamps, like I think you can do most jobs with them.
I completely agree. I mean, look, if you already have the best musicians in the world playing on the top instruments, and you have money to spend,
that's a lot of the job.
Then okay, sure. I mean, you may as well get better and better preamps.
Sure.
But if you don't, like, if you're recording bands, for instance, who don't have great instruments, then you'll get better results if you get better instruments and make them play those instead of their crappy instruments.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started picking up instruments, because I would get bands coming in with like really kind of bad stuff. Or not even bad stuff, but like the wrong stuff. I would get a band saying like, oh, we won let's talk about 15 years ago. We want to sound like Machine Head. Burn My Eyes guitar tone, and it's like, dude, you have a Marshall Plexi. So you're not gonna get that sound out of that. You need like a proper high gain amp, or they'll have like just some practice combo amp or a Line 6 amp. Oh yeah, but it's got the metal setting on it, and it's like, yeah, dude, trust me, it's just not gonna sound like that. So I think that's why I got so much backline these days, because especially guitar amps, I just love being able to just go like, hey, I think this part of the song it's Fender Twin with a Strat. Let's just do that, and boom, I've got it. So I like being able to do that.
Also, man, like you said, not always not always bad instruments, but even with the touring guys, sometimes they get good instruments that are just worn to shit because they tour with them.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like these drummers who are in bigger bands, yeah, they might have a killer drum set, but if it's spent any time touring, you can't trust it in the studio. Because all the hardware is going to be totally whacked out.
Yeah, it's going to be a nightmare. We were just talking about that at the Paradise Lost launch in Germany on the 1st of September, where they got a hire kit from Pearl, because Valtteri, the drummer in Paradise Lost, endorsed by Pearl. And the kit they sent, the hardware was so mashed up. It was just like, he was really nervous that the cymbal stuff were gonna fall off in the middle of the show and stuff. And obviously, I mean, let alone, I can't even begin to imagine the state of the bearing edges of those drums. I'm sure they're like pitted to hell.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then, tuning becomes a bit more complicated that way.
To say the least.
Uh-huh.
So, do you have any outboard gear that you use that you find that you always use, like go-to stuff for vocals or go-to stuff on drums, or are you seriously starting from scratch every time?
No, I tend to... I have preamps that I like using for certain things, especially on drums. So, like, for example, all my drum spots will be on APIs because I can drive them a bit. And that's one difference you get with some preamps, that you can actually drive them. And you can do that with the 1073s as well. So I do use them for that. And then when they're coming on the input of the desk, I trim the level a bit. So I get tiny bit of drive on the drums. And then all the cymbal stuff, like all the room mics and all the overheads and all that stuff, I use the SSL preamps because they're just very clean. Mm-hmm. But that's about it, really. I don't really use EQ or compression when recording. I just make drummers really bored because I just sit there tuning and changing skins and changing drums. Like, oh, I'm not feeling this snare drum. I'm not feeling the skins on the toms. Let's get a...
He sounds like me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the way to do it. Obviously I do a lot of pre-production with the bands, like especially with the big projects, and we have this discussed in depth before they go in the studio. So I'll have 3 different sets of skins, and because say like, oh, I don't know the kit, so I don't know what to use with it. So let's get this, let's get those, and let's get a set of those as well, and then try it out, and then just move mics. And I mean, like I've heard drums that sound great with nothing on them, like a long time ago, and I just like, wow, I can't believe how good that sounds with no EQ and no compression, and then I just, well, like if someone else can do it, then I can do it. So I just worked hard on it, and that's kind of what I do. I just spend a lot of time on drum tuning and stuff.
Man, and I gotta say too that, in addition to the instrument and the player being most important, with a drum, the way that you tune it makes a lot more of a difference than what gear you're running it through.
Oh yeah, massively.
Yeah, you should definitely take the time to work on that.
Yeah, and that's tough. That's something that that's a bit like making records. It takes a long time to understand how to tune drums.
So with tuning drums, is it something that you learned to do because you're a drummer, or did you learn to do it for the studio? And I'm asking because a lot of drummers I know don't know how to tune drums.
Yeah, same here. I was a bit of both. I actually did my dissertation in uni. It was about it was kind of about drum tuning and drum construction. So I really got really nerdy about it and tried lots of different things and read a lot of books about it, watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and to be fair, there's no right way of doing it. I kind of have a bit of a method, but it doesn't always work. You just have to, I think, like, drums are they're really temperamental, unique things sometimes. It doesn't always go like, oh, this is what I do. So you need to really feel out the drum. You have to feel it out. That's the way I tune.
What is your method, if you don't mind going into it a little bit?
Sure. I for like, I think toms, for example, I hate thin single ply skins on the bottom, like on the resonators. I really like kind of thicker stuff, like coated emperors.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you get a deeper tone and you don't get all that wow sound, that can be, sometimes it can take so long to tune resonators. Like it could, I just prefer the tone I get with those these days. Or even anything coated underneath, I find it sounds kind of better. And on the back...
Interesting, because a lot of the modern metal guys use ambassadors as their bottom head on toms, which is pretty thin.
Yeah, but
doesn't work for you.
I don't like drums that go boo 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 boo.
Yeah,
I like drums that go like bro bro bro, like massive, So I always record big drums as well. At the time, I kind of make drummers play like bigger sizes than they're normally used to. I just like kind of big sounds of big drums.
Great.
But with batter heads on the toms, one thing I think is really important that maybe a lot of people overlook is the way you sit the skin on the drum. Like, so So you take the old skin off. I always clean the bearing edges. Give it a good clean. Make sure there's no dust or nothing on there. Then I put the skin, and then I put the hoop back on, and then you have to like feel where the skin is kind of sitting like in the right place. Because I find if you don't get that right, then you're gonna start getting wrinkles. And I think that gets overlooked a little bit. However, with the Evans Level 360 thing, it's a lot easier. But I still prefer Remo skins for some stuff. So,
man, I'm a Remo guy.
The Evans I just wish Remo kind of like they came up with more interesting new products, because I think Evans are doing a lot of new stuff all the time, and Remo's just kind of stuck in their ways. But
fair enough.
But they're great, and like I like those black chrome skins that Evans does for some stuff. They just sound really deep, and for some stuff they just work really good. Like Remo, there's no equivalent of Remo on that. So, but yeah, Tom's like, I don't know, just sit the skin right, and then I just put them like finger tight all around, and then I start doing, that crisscross kind of pattern. Mm-hmm. I tend to go 3 full turns on each rod, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which is a bit harsh, but it works for me. And then the rest I really do by feel and just kind of listening to the tuning around the tension rods.
And are you aiming for a specific pitch, or are you just aiming for the drum, for where the drum sounds best for itself?
Yeah, I never do the pitch thing. I've never done it. I mean, no, I have tried for snares, but not for toms. I think it's just finding the sweet spot of the drum is always my. Mm-hmm. And the sweet spot can change depending on what kind of skins you're using too, obviously. So I just spend a lot of time getting. I mean, I think the Paradise Lost guys were getting a bit like, honestly, like what's going on? Like why are we not recording drums yet? It's because drums are not sounding great yet, so we're gonna have to wait.
How long did it take you to get the drum sounds on it?
About 3 days.
That's not a long time. That's a good amount of time. I hear you though. I like to take about 3 days as well. And I definitely have had bands start to get weird after about middle of the second day. But I just find that it takes some. I mean, I've had to move faster and definitely done stuff in one day. When you have no choice.
Yeah, of course, me too.
Yeah, but there's something that just happens by the end of the third day, because you've been tweaking stuff, and your ears don't last very long when you're getting drums because of what you're listening to all day. It's just cymbals getting hit or drums getting hit. So you do need to rest a lot on drum tone days, and I just find that you've had enough time to tweak it to where by the third day it should really be awesome. Yeah, I think that's a good amount of time. The thing I find, how you were talking about redoing recordings because you were tired, I find that sometimes on albums where I got the drum tone in like one day and then had to start recording on day 2, I find that by day 3, I've improved the drum sound anyways, because I would still have to keep tweaking it a little bit, and the drummer's playing better because he's more warmed up and comfortable, and we end up redoing this stuff from day 1 anyways. Yeah,
true. That does happen. Yeah.
So I say take the time to get it right and then record.
Yeah, and then another thing I spend a lot of time on is room mics, because I love my room mics.
You've got a very, very cool facility to use room mics in.
Yeah. And, coming back to what we were talking earlier about, like buying instruments, I think, like after I had like all, like the equipment I've had like a couple of years ago, and I'm like, actually what I really need now, what I really put my money on now, it's a really nice room. And I think that's a really good place to put money instead of preamps, for example.
I completely agree.
Like a good sounding room is gonna make a massive difference in your work. Like huge. Like if you're recording drums in a tiny little box that is full of foam and absorbent materials, and when you get a big room, you go like, wow, it's just something else.
Yeah, and it's interesting. That's the stuff people should spend their money on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think people read too many ads, and they go on Gear Slots and they just go, oh yeah, I need to buy this, I need to buy that. But obviously Gear Slots is run by salesmen. Or a lot of people in there are salesmen.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not run by salesmen, actually. I know the people who run it, but there are a lot of salesmen in there. And so, you kind of get sucked in. I need to buy this. I need to buy that. I need to buy that. And you know what? Like a perfect example of that was about 10, 12 years ago. I got in my head that I needed to buy a Manley Massive Passive. And I bought one. I saved enough money and I took a bit of a loan to buy one because I was convinced that everything that would pass through that was just going to sound amazing. and when I got it, I was a bit disappointed actually, because I was like, oh well, yeah, it sounds really nice, but it still just sounds like an EQ. It's not like it made everything sound like 3D and amazing. No, like that what makes 3D and amazing is just good instruments, good musicians, good room, good mics,
and someone that knows how to mix well.
Exactly, yeah. And record well.
Yeah, that was my first impression too when I first started using high-end gear. Was this isn't really, I mean, it's certainly not hurting anything, but a shitty guitar tone going through a 1073 is still a shitty guitar tone.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's just going through a nice preamp, so you hear a very detailed shitty guitar tone. That's basically what it is. If you put a really bad singer through a $30,000 microphone, all you're going to hear is a really detailed bad singer.
Yeah.
You're going to hear everything that's bad about the singer.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not going to make them a good singer. It's not going to make someone that has a bad tone suddenly have a good tone.
I agree.
But I think that's where people get it wrong from reading online on places like Gear Sluts, is they think that the gear is going to cause some fundamental change to the material that they're working on. And when in reality, the thing that'll cause the most fundamental change is your brain and the instruments and the people involved.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, it was like the first experience I had with that was when I was the early days of working in that little recording studio in London, and we had a house drum kit. We had a very small drum room there, and I always thought, like, as a drummer, like, oh my god, these drums they're just not very good drums. It was like a premier middle of the range kit, and then one day a band came in with a proper session drummer, and I could not believe they were the same drums. I was just like literally like, wow, this. I mean, I think he had brought his own snare, but just the way the kick and the tom sounded, the way he tuned it and stuff, was like, wow, it's just, I can't believe it's the same kit.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I've had sessions where, just because of a weird scheduling thing, two different bands had to use the same drum set with the same microphone setup, different cymbals, but it was a scheduling thing. It was a nightmare that came true scheduling wise, and we had no choice basically. So, because I would never suggest doing that.
Sure.
Unless you have no choice. So we had no choice. So exact same setup, same microphones, nothing got moved around. Sounded completely different.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, one drummer was kind of a pussy with how he hit. The other drummer is just like one of the, like a badass nu metal drummer, meaning hit really, really hard. Like, maybe not the fastest, but like just hit like a fucking beast. And the difference in the way those drums sounded was just incredible. And the only thing that changed was the drummer. and of course the sticks.
Yeah, what I find is as well, like I've had some drummers that I call it the touch, basically, because I have had some drummers that they don't hit super hard, but they sound amazing. So, but I agree, like the heavy hitters always sound really good, generally speaking. But sometimes they hit the cymbals too loud as well, and that starts.
Oh yeah, that's really annoying.
So it's like I had this drummer recently where he's just, I think he went to drum school and stuff, and he just knows how to hit the drums so well. Like he'll just hit the drums hard, but not super hard. It was very consistent, and then his cymbals, he just like he'll just play them like at the right volume. It's just so nice when it's like that. Or like the worst thing is when you get the drummers that hit the cymbals louder than the drums. That's when I start weeping. It's just, that's just as a drummer as well. It's like, oh my god, it's just.
It hurts.
It doesn't happen very often these days, fortunately. But because most of the people I work with in the last for a while now, it's like they're all mostly professional musicians. So, but yeah, like sometimes it's just like you're hitting the cymbals, you're hitting that hi-hat like like you're hitting someone that did something really bad to you. And you need to stop doing that.
Yeah, it's the single worst or single easiest way to ruin drum takes is to go crazy with the hi-hat. Get into everything. Destroy every single mic.
I'll give you a tip, and for the people who listen to this, the best hi-hats I've recorded that are actually the most beautiful sound and the quietest hi-hat I recorded was with the Soul Sapphire album, and their Sabian 15-inch or 16-inch, I think they were, artisan cymbals. Those things are sounding amazing, but they're like $1,000 for a pair of hi-hats, so they're super expensive. But I really want to get my hands on a pair of those because they're just super musical, beautiful sound, and they just didn't get on the way very much. It was kind of quiet, which is great.
Sounds perfect.
Because I know a lot of us struggle with the hi-hat. The hi-hat's always one of those things that can be really annoying. I mean, like, massively depends on the drummer, but hi-hats are just loud.
Yeah, you don't need to record them half the time.
I don't really mic up hi-hats. I would say it's like 50-50 depending on the band and what the drummer is doing. Because I use so many room mics that it's just gonna be there. And it's probably gonna be there annoying me in a lot of places.
Yeah, I can completely relate. So I have some questions here from our listeners for you.
Oh, cool.
So here's one from Eric Burt, which is, when mastering a band like Sunn O, how do you approach compression and limiting, since there's very little, if any, dynamics to the music? Is compression and limiting even needed?
That's a really good question. The answer is, I do very little dynamic processing to those kind of records. I mainly, with Steven, he really likes analog stuff like I do. And a lot of the time with that kind of stuff, it's just literally like I'll just run it through some of my outboard to vibe it up, and then I'll definitely master it to analog tape and just get a vibe of it. Because there is no need to, there's no transients to like get excitement in the mix, and there is no, it's like a wall of noise, so you don't need to compress, you don't need an SSL bus compressor type compression for that kind of stuff. So it's more about like maybe some kind of gentle, kind of nice vibey compressor going in it, just like touching it really slowly, but mainly just like a bit of EQ and run it through one of my tape machines, through my Studer, and because I actually used real tape. And no, they don't sound anything like the plugins you can get. I got the plugins too, but they're completely different, which is great. But the plugins sound cool too. It's just a different sound. But yeah, that's kind of what I do with stuff like that.
Thank you for going into that. I think that's cool to hear that that's how you do it, because we on our program Nail the Mix, when people submit their mixes for the competition that we do every month, one of the biggest problems that I hear is people's mastering jobs. And lots of times you can tell the mix was probably okay, and they just completely decimated it with the insane amount of compression and limiting. They just went nuts and just destroyed the mix completely. This happens hundreds of times a month with these submissions, because we often get over 600. So I'm hearing this problem a lot. So it's great to hear that doesn't need dynamics, so you're not going to go crazy with it. You're just doing things to try to make it sound musical.
That's always, like I always made records as loud as they can be. The second I start hearing like the mix is getting damaged, I stop. And then if the client complains that it's too quiet, then I'll try and boost it a little bit more. But it's not about being the loudest, especially now when, like all the streaming services like Spotify, they're dropping everything to like -4 dB or something like that. They're just doing minus 0.4, I think they're doing. I don't know what they're doing, but they're encoding basically. The loudest you have the master, from what I understand now, the loudest the master, the worse it's going to sound through those encoders. So now, actually, like all my masters this year, they've actually gone down in volume a lot, because I'm using that dynameter, and there's no need anymore to be the loudest. That was a thing of the like 2000s. So it sounds louder on the radio. I mean, like, who the fuck listens to radio these days? Not many people.
Dude, I don't know when the last time I listened to radio was.
Nor do I. I don't have any friends that listen to radio. I mean, occasionally, like, okay, the builders, when they were building my new studio, they had the radio on, but it's pop music. I think people that listen to the kind of stuff we listen to, we're all kind of like record collectors and like proper music fans, and we like sound quality, and we don't need to butcher our records with just compressing the hell out of them. It's just no need anymore. And it's not just, like I understand from but the Arch Enemy record sounds louder than my record, so I need to make it as loud. And that doesn't always work that way, because sometimes the way you mix the album, the way your band sounds, it's never going to be that loud. Because if you're tuned to A, if you tune guitars to A and you're playing Doom, you probably not going to be as loud as a really melodic band that tunes in standard tuning in E, because of the frequencies. I don't know. I'm just probably just thinking, looking at the moon in the countryside now. I have no idea but I guess, I guess that would be a thing.
I mean, dude, I totally think that the arrangement of the music and along with how it's mixed make a huge difference in how loud it's going to be. You need to mix things in a way that they can be loud, if that's your goal. Like, it doesn't just happen. So I think a lot of people have a problem with it. They're not mixing specifically for that goal, and then they get disappointed when they can't turn it up, even if their mix was just fine.
Mm-hmm. It does happen. I mean, I've had records. I do a lot of mastering. Like, Orgone Studios started as Orgone mastering because that was a thing that I was always really fascinated about. So I started as a mastering suite, actually. So subsequently, I've done lots of mastering over the years, and I've had records that it's like, it just, like, I can't get it to sound louder without making it sound bad. So I just need to leave it there, because I don't want it to sound bad. And I don't care if it's not as loud as Death Magnetic, because that sounds bad in terms of mastering.
Yes, it does. So here's one from Sasha Riesling, which is, your studio looks incredibly beautiful. Can you
thanks.
talk about the acquisition of the place and the process of getting it to the state that it looks like on the website pictures? And also, what do you think people should really think about before bringing their studio or operation into a place that is not connected to their home?
Well, the first question, it will be that the building has a lot of history, actually. It used to be part of the code breakers here in, like near me, there's a city called Bletchley, where in the World War II, that's how they cracked the Enigma machine of the Nazis. And that building where I'm now used to be a broadcast studio where they used to record fake propaganda for the Nazis and broadcast it from there.
Wow, that's really cool.
So that was pretty cool. But trust me, there was nothing that looked like a recording studio in there because, I mean, the building is about 80 years old. And it was a complete mess. I mean, I had to spend a lot of money doing that place up. So to get it that way, I mean, I did have the wooden floor, which I was lucky. I hacked off all the plaster just to leave the raw brick because it's a brick building from the outside. So I thought, well, brick sounds great. I mean, if it worked for Steve Albini, it's probably going to work for me because he's got a lot of brick in his studio and I love his stuff. And yeah, I just, took a lot of investment. It cost me twice more than I anticipated. So it got me in a bit of debt. But, luckily business is good. So I think I'll be out of that soon. And then just more like talking to an acoustician, a friend of mine in Colombia I used to be in a band with, Manuel, he's like, he gave me a lot of advice, like, I want to achieve this. And he's like, try this, try that. I built a lot of, like, all the acoustic stuff I built myself. All the traps I built with rock wool. I made all the frames. I made all the quadratic diffusers from scratch, so you can save a lot of money doing it that way, and then you can do it the way you like as well. I spent a lot of time also thinking on the decoration of the place because I'm very sensitive to spaces and light. For example, if you put me in a white bright light, I'm not gonna feel good for like 10 hours a day sitting there. I'm not gonna feel good. So I just wanted to make it really vibey, like a really nice place with really nice views. It's in the top of a hill, so you have windows looking to the countryside. There's nothing around. So when I went to see the building, I was like, yeah, this is the perfect spot. And against all the odds, because it was very difficult to get all the permits from the council to do it, I just kept pushing. Even my parents were like, you need to give up with this idea. This is stupid. This is cost you like £5,000 and you still haven't even got a lease on that place. And I'm like,
okay, that's really fascinating to me. What did you do to convince them? Because bureaucracy over there, from what I understand, is really tough to get through.
Yeah, I mean the Brits do love paperwork. And there were all sort of things that it's a listed building, and it's like, and then some people were saying some different department it's not listed, but it's listed, it's not listed, and then it worked out that it's not listed. A listed building means it's a protected building because of its heritage, and if you get a listed building, you're into a world of chaos because the council's not going to let you do anything. Then there were things like, okay, I want to hack off all the plaster, and they were like, oh, no, well, you can't do that because CO2 emissions and your heating is going to be bad and you're going to use too much electricity, so that's bad for the environment. And honestly, there were so many things. I also have to had an ecological appraisal thing where they needed to check if I had bats in my roof.
And did you?
I didn't. I told them like, guys, listen, it's a tin roof. Like, bats don't like tin roofs, as far as I know. They like wooden roofs. Well, we don't think you have bats, but you still have to do the ecological appraisal, and we still have to check. That cost me £1,000 for someone to come into the building, go in the roof, and go like, yeah, you're fine. And that was £1,000. Then I had
amazing.
They didn't like the plans at the beginning, like, no, you need to do this, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. And then it's like a combination of give and take, like, okay, I'm not going to do this, but how about I do it this way? Is it possible? and it just went. It took like a year just to get it all sorted. It was really difficult, but I am the kind of person that when I really want something, I just do everything to get it. So it was really tough, and it was very expensive, but I'm super happy. I'm really happy the way it looks, the way it sounds, the place where it is. The accommodation I have in the studio is really nice. My house is really nice in the countryside. I've got a beautiful, really, really old, tiny village. 10-minute walk from the house with lots of old pubs and restaurants. And it's just a really nice environment for bands to work at. So that's why I kept pushing with it.
Sounds like it was worth it.
Yeah, I'm really happy. It cost me a lot of stress. I cannot begin to tell you how stressful the whole building period was. It broke me. It really did.
I can imagine. I mean, just building a studio and not having to deal with that stuff is a pain in the ass. Mm. And it already takes a long time. It always takes longer than you imagine, and it's always hard. But to add that kind of stress on top of it seems you must have really wanted it. Yeah,
I did. As I tell you, my dad's a really, really, I really look up to him because he's a really good businessman, and he's kind of like me. Like I think I get it from him that like if you really want something, you keep on pushing. And even himself was telling me, like, you need to give up on this place. Just go and find somewhere else. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. This is the place I want. And so, yeah, and in terms of the sounds, I just been experimenting as I've been going, like at the beginning, I had the acoustic panels. I think I had too many on the ceiling. So I started taking some out and then just hearing it in the control room, like with drums and stuff, and now I think you have a studio and it just never ends. There's always something to change and something to buy and something to fix, and so but it's pretty much there now. And it's been fully working since March, but there's always I've been like fine-tuning everything, and it's getting there to like the point that I'm like 100% with it.
All right, last question. This one's from Jesse Johnson, which is, are there any particular tips you can recommend for getting drums and other stuff to cut through the ultra-thick guitars with the Sunn O's and Electric Wizards of the world?
Yeah. I actually find easier to cut through those than cut through like 5150s, because those take so much mid-range and so much kind of top end. But I think that the trick to, I'm not really even sure how I do it. Like, you have to, I think like choose the right drums for the project you're working on. I think is quite important. If you have, I kind of found once that I was recording a really heavy album that was really down-tuned, and I had really big drums with really down-tuned tuning, and that was difficult to make it cut through. So what I did the next time is I got like less deep-sounding drums for that, and you get a lot more separation that way when you're doing the kind of doomy heavy stuff.
So in some ways it comes down to the arrangement and instrument choice.
I think so, yeah. That's it's a classic thing as well, where especially with melodic stuff, like some of the arrangements, a lot of the time you get musicians writing a lot of arrangements in the same octave and stuff like that, and you just have to like move it around, because it's just like, okay, like the piano, the bass, the guitars are playing exactly the same notes, so that's not gonna work.
Yeah, definitely not.
To cut through with the drums, I don't really know. Like, I love room mics. I think room mics give you, the kind of top end and that kind of, they make the drums sound so much bigger if you have like good room mics. It's just, you know, like spot mics. Doesn't even sound like a drum kit. It just sounds like separate drums mic'd up individually.
And kind of weird sounding too.
Yeah, they do sound weird.
Well, it's not like you stick your ear next to a drum like that when you listen.
That's exactly what I tell people.
When you actually hear drums in real life, you're hearing the room and you're hearing some of the direct hit from the drum in front of you, but it's in a very perfect balance with its environment. And just hearing one element like like a close mic drum on its own just sounds weird out of context.
No, so yeah, that's I don't really have like a specific answer to that. I think it's just more like we're in the studio and we're trying out stuff and we just kind of see what kind of works with the material. But yeah, just go with just maybe pre-production really helps for this kind of stuff, I think, because I just get an idea of what instruments I think are gonna work together.
All right, I actually have one more question.
Go for it.
Because I feel like some people will get mad if I don't at least ask you about this. So this is from Sasha Riesling. He's asking, so with knowing that Papa Emeritus is a master of the whole ghost operation and knowing insights on how specific he actually is with every little micro decision, can you talk about the process for Opus Eponymous? He must have already known that his band will take off. I'm very interested in the way musical and production decisions were made in the whole process, and thank you for being a part of the beginning of the coolest band in the world.
Oh, cool, thanks. Well, Ghost is, I would say, is the album that really put me in the map, which really helped, and I'm very grateful for that. I was just with Papa in a Bloodstock festival about 3 weeks ago, and it was really nice to see him. He's very grateful still for my input on that album, and that was really nice because I really haven't seen him in a long time, so that was really cool. But with Ghost, I've been doing a bit of work for Rise Above, which is Lee Dorian's label, and they released a demo, and everyone like in the underground was really going nuts about the demo. And then Lee told me that he was thinking of signing them, and then he would like me to do the record. And I went, okay, sure, like that would be great. I really like what I'm hearing. So, and then Papa was playing with his other band back in the day in London, and we met outside King's Cross station, and we went for a coffee, and we already been emailing each other, and I just said, look, I think this is the kind of sound we need. I think we need vintage drums, you know, like an old Ludwig, and we get the snare tune this way. I mean, I've got emails where I just kind of saying like all the kind of stuff we were to use, and you know, like kind of low gain, kind of vintage, you know, like kind of old Marshall tone, even though we use orange amps for that. We use an old Ampeg, the flip top one, the Portaflex for the bass. But the drums were recorded in Sweden, in a very small studio. I wasn't there, but the guy who was recording it was very friendly and very helpful. And he followed my notes. I sent very specific notes of which mics I wanted where, and how I wanted the drums to, and then what kind of drums I wanted and stuff. And yeah, we just worked together really well. It was like a team effort, and I think we just came up with this, you know, this kind of really, I don't know, like vintage kind of classic sound, I guess, but still very clean.
Yes.
I mean, me and Papa we were talking a lot about the production on Merciful Fate's Melissa. That record sounds incredible. So we're thinking about that, but maybe with a bit more kind of Blue Oyster Cult kind of vibe, and you know, like I'm a sucker for old rock, so and I love old productions of some bands, you know, like Steely Dan, you know, stuff like that sounds great. ZZ Top record sounds great. So it was like yeah, I think I kind of came up with the sound of that, and then I mixed it. Took a while to mix because, you know, we're experimenting some different kind of directions, and then eventually we got there, and I think he knew he was sitting on something good, and then when the album came out, it just all exploded, and it just went really well. So that's kind of how it went, really.
I guess that's the part where, just wrapping this around, how we're talking about luck. I mean, I wouldn't say it's lucky that you had that gig and did a great job with it, but that little bit of luck that you even met him in the first place sure helped. But it wouldn't have made any difference if you hadn't been someone that was obsessed with recording for all those years before that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I think that it always takes a little bit of luck, but luck with work.
Yeah, it does. And, and for the same reason, I still sometimes I hear bands, like new bands that I really like, and I like, or see a band live, I just think like, wow, these guys are really, really good. And I know they have no budget, and I know, they have nothing. But, sometimes I do pick up projects that I do for like next to nothing. And then I try to get them signed. And then if there's money from the advance, then they pay me and stuff like that. But I do take those risks because you never know who's going to be the next Ghost, like the next band to like make it that big. Obviously, a lot of the success with Ghost is that Papa works really hard. He works fucking hard, that guy, and he's got the vision, and he just works hard, and a lot of musicians don't. That's the problem. So
it's very, very true. Of course, he works hard. That's the thing. Is like I was saying earlier, I don't know a single person who's done great things or is great at something who doesn't work their ass off.
It's true.
You just can't be lazy.
Yeah.
Well, Jaime, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time. I've had a great time speaking with you, and you and Russ should do an episode with us sometime.
Oh, we would love to.
It would be cool.
And Andy as well. We've been talking with Andy Sneap.
If he'll do it, hey, man. Andy, I've known Andy for maybe not as well as you guys, but I've kind of known him for like 10 years or something, or 11 years now. And he has an open invitation to come on whenever. So if you guys want to do the three of you, that would be great too.
Yeah, it would be really funny. Those two are really funny, man. I love those guys. They're great.
But we should do that. I think it'll be cool.
Yeah, sure.
Well, thanks, man.
No, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me to be part of this. It's very cool. I appreciate it. And, if there's anything I can help with, or if, if anyone's got any questions or something, if there's a way of reaching me, I'm happy to, maybe not in writing, but maybe because of time I'm very busy at the moment. But yeah, anything I can do to help, and just let me know. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, for sure.
The Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast is brought to you by the 2017 URM Summit, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to spend 4 days with the next generation of audio professionals and special guests, including Andrew Wade, Kane Churko, Billy Decker, Fluff, Brian Hood, and many more. The inspiration, ideas, and friendship you'll get here are the things that you'll look back on as inflection points in your life. Learn more at urmsummit.com. The URM podcast is also brought to you by Heirloom Microphones. Heirloom microphones are high-end condenser microphones with something that has never been seen in the microphone industry: a triangular membrane. With our patented membranes and our tailored phase linear electronics, your recording and live experience will never be the same. Heirloom, our microphones will help you discover clarity. Go to ehrlund.se for more info. To get in touch with the URM podcast, visit urm.com/podcast and subscribe today.